From unified champion to losing 3 of his last 4 fights, is Jarrett Hurd finished? Now, Jarrett Hurd looked like the future of DMV boxing for a while on the come up. On his way to his first title shot, he was able to stop and beat a lot of undefeated fighters, and he was able to overall look good against journeymen who were fitted for him. He will put all of this experience together from these prior fights into his win in 2017 when he was able to claim his first world championship, winning the IBF Super Welterweight Championship by knocking out Tony Harrison in round number 7. But he didn't stop there, going to beat and stop Austin Trout in his next bout to defend the IBF title. And then going to beat his first and only 5-star opponent rated on BoxRec, Landry Lara. And this is where I thought this was, well, in my opinion, this was the peak of Jarrett Hurd's career. This was a really good, very close fight, very competitive fight, and he was able to pull it out and defeat Landry Lara in a very, very competitive fight. And we finally saw all of Jarrett Hurd in that fight, I felt. Not only did he claim the WBA Super and the IBO championships in this fight, he claimed a lot of experience, and he was able to put Lara down in the 12th round to secure a victory for him by split decision. In his next fight, he took a slight step down, stopping journeyman Jason Wellborn in the 4th round with a vicious body shot to retain his titles. But after that is when the beginning of this downfall happens, where Swift Jarrett Hurd ran into Julian J. Rock Williams. Now, most of you guys know this, but if you didn't know, let me tell you. Hurd came out looking slow. He came out looking kind of out of order, and Julian J. Rock Williams really just took advantage of it, and he was able to knock Jarrett Hurd down in the fight and cruise to a decision to take the titles off of Jarrett Hurd. As a plus 525 underdog, Julian J. Rock Williams was able to beat Jarrett Hurd in his, home, in the DMV area, which is pretty much like a homecoming for Jarrett Hurd. But Williams was able to do that, and he was able to do it in style, knocking Hurd down in front of his home crowd and everything. And this is where the spiral or the domino effect kind of takes place and starts. Now, Hurd did make a slight comeback, defeating Francisco Santana as the opener of a Showtime card in January 2020 in Barclays Center in a very, very dominant unanimous decision victory. However, after about a year and a half of not being in the ring, he returned to fight Luis Arias at middleweight, which was, what most people would have thought have been better for Hurd, being 5'11", moving up to middleweight. And he moved up, fought Luis Arias, who I thought Hurd would be able to, have a Francisco Santana type performance, outclassing Arias and cruising to a pretty flawless unanimous decision. However, Arias brought the pain to Jarrett Hurd, and Arias was able to just outwork Hurd. And many people, including myself, was like, Jarrett Hurd is just not the same. That's what I was thinking watching this performance. And Arias was able to win a split decision. He did go down in round 9, but it was an outdoor fight in Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. And it started raining, and I thought that knockdown was a slip, but they gave it to Hurd. But obviously that didn't really help, as Hurd still lost the fight by split decision. And that takes us to Jarrett Hurd's latest performance, fighting again at middleweight. He fought Jose Armando Resendez this Saturday, and it didn't go well. Resendez was outworking Hurd. He was beating him to the punch. It was a very back and forth competitive fight, but Resendez was just winning more rounds, and the judges' scorecards at the time of the stoppage show that, with 2 of the judges having Resendez up 87-84 and one of them having about 89-82 at the time of the stoppage. and Hurd had, the fight had to be stopped at the end of the ninth round because of a lip problem that Hurd faced, and it was a very entertaining fight, but a lot of fans, including myself, see a problem, and the problem is Hurd needs to go back to his old usual style. He can't fight like this by blocking punches with his face. It is very entertaining, but Jarrett Hurd just is not built for that type of fighting style. Now, there is one thing that I would like to state before I go into, uh, what's next for Hurd, and that is that his father, unfortunately, Fred Hurd Sr., actually passed away a few months before his fight with Luis Arias, which was his second loss, and that could have made a big difference. I did remember hearing Jarrett Hurd on the PBC podcast pretty much explaining how the death of his father really affected him, and it felt, and obviously that would affect someone very, very deeply, losing their father. And that is kind of when we seen the switch in his performances. He was just getting beat to the punch, outworked in these fights, and that really could have been the source of a lot of that. Now, let's move on to what's next for Jarrett Hurd, in my opinion. Now, a lot of people, including myself, think that it may be time to hang it up for Hurd, or either hang it up, or me living in Maryland, I know a lot of these club level shows where fighters, guys like Damon Nicholson, some other guys with a few losses on the record that are from the area, they come out, they'll fight a bum, they'll bring in a big crowd, and overall they'll get a nice payday to fight a bum and get an early knockout win. I believe Jarrett Hurd could come to some of those shows and, get a few easy wins to kind of regain his confidence back if this is really what he wants to do. I did hear him say in an interview, "I'll be back." So if he does want to come back, I believe he should either come, bring in, a crowd to some of these local shows, or he could fight on the undercard of some of these PBC shows, some of the before the bell fights, that Showtime has been offering on their YouTube for free. But the thing is that some of these fights, these were, his last two fights were picked for him to win, and he was upsetted. So the matchmaking has to be a much better service for him. They have to be more careful with who they put him in the ring with. Which, I'd say he should just come local and, fight in some of these local shows rather than risking another loss, because I believe another loss would be the end of seeing Jarrett Hurd on televised boxing. However, me being the type of boxing guy that I am, I believe it's time for Jarrett Hurd to hang it up. There's no point in taking this much damage. He had the peak of his career. He was able to be noticed as a unified champion. He was able to defeat Eris Landry Lara in a very close fight. And Lara's a guy who arguably beat Canelo Alvarez a few years back. He was able to, he had the peak of his career. He was able to defend those titles, those unified titles once, and he was able to defend his IBF title 4 times, I believe. So I believe it may be time for Jarrett Hurd to hang it up. But hey, you guys let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you guys for tuning in, and let me know if you want more of these type of styles of videos.